So do you ever look at these hot comic book lists like the Key Collector Trending 20, the CBSI Hot list, the Cover Price Top 10, and wonder how exactly they're arriving at what books need to go on these lists? The list this week seems really funky and I'm seeing a bit of a pattern. And so I want to talk about some of the books on this list this week, and I'm actually going to pick the 5 worst comic book investments on these lists in my opinion. Hi, I'm Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd, and welcome to my top 5 not to buy list for this week. Let's start off with Superman 53. All right, so Superman 53 is apparently on the list because of 1,000% increase in sales based on the fact that it was a Nick's Picks book last week. So let's talk about why there's any spec value to this book. Now, what happened is, if you're not familiar, Superman has sort of changed his motto. It's no longer truth, justice, and the American way, which by the way, has changed many times over the years, but it's not that anymore. Now it's truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Now, love it or hate it, it's a pretty controversial change for a lot of reasons. I can understand why, but that said, this is not the first time truth, justice, and the American way appears in Superman's lore. It is a great cover. It's a very patriotic cover. In fact, I'll go so far as to say I think it's an amazing Superman cover. So it's a cool book, but I don't know about spec value. When you're an app that has the reach and the follow that Key Collector has, and you put up a cheap book on the Nick's Picks, and it resonates with people, or it's a cool cover, it's going to sell. That's just a matter of fact. But now to move it over to the Key Collector Trending 20 and cite yourself as the source for why the book is moving and say there's 1,000% jump in sales. Meanwhile, you're not explaining where you're getting your sales numbers from, that there is 1,000% jump in sales. And all of this is just based around James Gunn using the term in a synopsis of the movie. I'm sorry, but that's starting to feel a lot like sniffing your own farts to me. And that's what lands at the number 5 spot on the list. All right, I told you there'd be shenanigans. Let's talk about more shenanigans. That book jumped up 1,000%. Now at the number 4 spot, let's talk about Longshot number 1 from the Longshot miniseries. First appearance of Longshot. It's also the first appearance of Spiral. The only thing I think I could really point to is that there was a really awesome Spiral Marvel Legends action figure that was released recently that is legitimately pretty cool. But I don't think that's what caused any kind of spike for this book. That seems really thin. But Longshot number 1, the only reason that we're given for why it appears on the list, there's really nothing else. I really don't think that Spiral thing is it, is a 125% increase in copies sold. Now keep in mind, that could be just as simple as 10 copies sold last week, and this week, like 22 copies sold. I mean, I'm sure it's more than that, but still, it's not exactly a huge increase. Which brings us to our third book, which is Amazing Spider-Man 101, the first appearance of Morbius. That's right, which is the first appearance of Morbius, which means I get to say, it's Morbin time. So fun. But this book, the reason that we're given is it has a 200% increase in copies sold. Now, I'm not just going to beat a dead horse here. I just want to point out that the percent of copies sold without telling us the actual volume is really only half the equation. 200% jump could be a massive number if the number was already high. But realistically, how many people are chasing ASM 101 right now, considering Morbius was a huge flop and there's no further plans for the character really? It just doesn't seem like it's going to be a hot property that people are really going to be chasing right now. Now, it is an ASM key, and it's a big key in that run, really. Those books are always in demand, so there's probably a pretty good steady base level. I bet you when I go back and track my prices for this book and track my 6 month later, 1 year later prices for this book, I'll notice that there was tons of copies sold the entire time. That's enough about those 2 books. I don't mean to pick on Key Collector unnecessarily here. I do think that that list serves a very valid purpose, and in fact, I genuinely enjoy checking out it, the CBSI list, the cover price list. I think it's kind of fun. But I do think that it's strange every once in a while what books appear on these lists, and the fuzzy logic here just isn't adding up to me. Now, what do I think's going on? In case you're wondering, I think that we're kind of in this lean time, and it's pretty hard to pick 20 trending books. We had all the excitement from the DC announcements. There's a little bit of a carryover from that, and we'll get to that later. But we're in a pretty soft market. People aren't necessarily chasing as many books as they used to. Nothing really hit the newsstands the comic shops, that was extremely sought after, with a couple exceptions. So I think that's just kind of a sign of the times. All right, the number 2 book on the list is a much more traditional spec book that we'll talk about. Captain America 139. This is the first appearance of Layla Taylor, who becomes a girlfriend of Sam Wilson. This book appears on the list because it's based around rumors that we're going to get a version of Layla Taylor in Captain America New World Order, the new film coming out starring Sam Wilson as Captain America. Side note, this one also cites that there's a 433% increase in copies sold. That one makes more sense based on a rumor. That's all I'm saying. Worth noting that this is a rumor. All that aside, in what universe is anybody really going to be chasing down Sam Wilson's girlfriend's first appearance? Yes, if we get her in a trailer, of course, this book will bump, what, 2 times as much as it's worth now, maybe? Yeah, I guess if you see this sitting for less than FMV at a comic shop, there's no reason not to pick it up. But if that's really what we're doing with our time, and those are the hottest comics out right now, well, I got news for you. The comic book biz is in trouble. All right, so let's talk about the number 1 pick on my list. This week, it's Legends #1, which is the first appearance of Amanda Waller. I've talked about this book before. I can't remember if it appeared on a previous top 10, but I just have to say this. Amanda Waller is a cool character. We've seen her many times in film depictions. I don't care how big of a part she's going to play in James Gunn's DCU. We've already seen her. She's a known quantity. We have more properties coming with Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller's cool. But if you thought that already, wouldn't you have grabbed this book? Now, this book appeared on the CBSI Hot 10. And again, to Ben's credits, I love the way that he does some of his write-ups here. He says go after like a Canadian price variant or a 9.8 newsstand. And I agree. If you're going to chase this, you may as well go for the rarer versions of this book. Legends looks like a cool series, by the way. I actually need to go back and read this one because it's one I missed when I was an original reader back in the day. But as far as spec value of this book, come on. We're really going to go after Amanda Waller and say that she's the future of spec? There are way more exciting DC characters I'd rather be looking at right now than Amanda Waller as far as spec value goes. I'd love to hear what your pick was for the top book not to buy in the comments. I want to take a second to thank all my channel members. They appear on the list right here, right now. I love those people. Thank you so much for everything you do to help support the channel. If you want to become one, there is a join button down below. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos, and I want to remind you, as always, hey, 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 hey. Read comics every day.